And now to this video game, so horrifying it has been banned in Great Britain.
Brutal, violent, shocking. These are a few words many people use to describe Manhunt. The 2003 Rockstar title and its sequel has made quite a name for itself in the past decade and a half. Headlines have called the game legendary, a masterpiece, and allegedly promoting vigilantism. Before we begin, we publish new content all week long, so be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. Some prominent critics ranged from company CEOs, a certain now barred lawyer, and even various US senators, including Hillary Clinton. Of course, for games as graphic and violent as this, Manhunt 1 and 2 would be banned by several countries. Some nations even went so far as to make it a federal offense to possess a copy of the games. So, its fame and infamy will all depend on who you're talking to. Given how long it's been since the game launch, does the first Manhunt still retain its shock value? Does it still deserve the glowing praise critics have continued to give it?
Dear purveyors of senseless violence.
If you've never played or heard of Manhunt, it isn't your typical Rockstar game. Despite being a post-Grand Theft Auto 3 game, Manhunt is a linear survival horror with stealth mechanics. You play as James Earl Cash, a prisoner placed on death row and executed by lethal injection. However, Cash wakes up to find himself at the mercy of a mysterious character known only as the Director, who promises Cash his freedom so long as Cash assists him in making the ultimate snuff film. To do this, Cash must traverse dark alleys and abandoned buildings while avoiding and killing gangs of neo-Nazis, mercenaries, and murderous psychopaths. While it didn't see the same lavish praise as the Grand Theft Auto games, Manhunt still garnered high acclaim. Many critics gave Manhunt high review scores for delivering an overall experience that was intense and entertaining, in a sadistic way. Back in 2014, we put Manhunt at number 6 for the top 10 Rockstar games, noting its controversial violence and its tense and exhilarating gameplay. That isn't to say everyone felt the same, and out of curiosity, we've decided to revisit the supposed murder simulator via PlayStation 4 to see if it withstood the test of time.
Nice that jump. That's my boy.
Surprisingly, the graphics aren't too much of an eyesore. For a game that launched 2 years after the PlayStation 2, it looks alright. However, that's as good as it gets. What really hinders us from enjoying the game is in the controls and gameplay. The camera is an absolute hassle to deal with. When you're moving around, you see everything in third person, but when standing still, the game cuts to first person. It's hard to tolerate when you're trying to adjust your positioning to avoid getting spotted. Then there's the gameplay, which tries to do something with its melee combat, but it quickly devolves into button mashing and occasionally getting sucker punched. To make matters worse, it's incredibly easy to fail a takedown, and when that happens, you're forced back into button mashing combat.
Come on, fight back, you bitch.
Last but not least, we have the violence, and boy, it does not hold up well. If you're expecting the goriest deaths in video games, you're going to be disappointed. The best executions don't appear until the very end of the game, and every other execution quickly grows tiresome to pull off, leaving much to be desired. While we understand that this game was released in 2002, we've seen games that have been far more brutal and graphic. So, at this point, Manhunt's shock factor is non-existent. This is what makes Manhunt so disappointing. We all talk about this game for being so controversial and shocking, like it's the most taboo game ever made. During the public's struggle with Manhunt, media outlets and critics continuously discussed how realistic executions were. Some people even attempted linking crimes with the game, accusations many would deem absurd. Although, our biggest gripe with Manhunt's supposed controversial violence stems from the many violent and gory games that came before it. Did the world forget about Mortal Kombat and Doom? Both franchises launched in 1992, a whole decade before Manhunt, and they have been frequent subjects when discussing violence in video games. Dare we bring up movies and television? Psycho was made in 1960 and viewed at the time as incredibly violent. Tom and Jerry is often referenced when discussing insanely violent cartoons and is so widely known that their parody counterparts, Itchy and Scratchy from The Simpsons, have become television icons alongside them. With all of this in mind, it begs to question if Manhunt was as shocking as people made it out to be, or if the controversy was conjured up out of exaggeration.
Well, I've never changed the world before, so I don't know how long it takes exactly.
In retrospect, Manhunt has not aged well, both in quality and controversy. While some may endear to its juvenile behavior and mindless ultraviolence, it's hard to see why the game received so much praise when there's so much wrong with it. The camera can be infuriating, and the dumbed-down combat is lackluster. As for the violence, you can hear Alfred Hitchcock and Ed Boon laughing. If you're looking for some video game junk food, maybe you wouldn't mind Manhunt. Really, your enjoyment all depends on ignoring its reputation for being shocking, or if you're looking for some cheap laughs. Check out these other great clips from MojoPlays, and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.